Hi, and welcome back to the podcast where we talk to the rebels, the renegades, and the revolutionaries that are changing the way that we work. Today, I'm joined by Phil Sterne, who I am really excited to have a conversation with because not only has he written a book that I think is really exciting and pushing the boundaries in a way that I love, but at the same time, I think he's got some really important insights to share. For those who haven't joined us before, though, before we get down to that, my name's Kate Ball. I am your host. I am the founder of Sparkle and Sass Consulting. I'm the author of a book series called The Culture Chronicles, and I am also your straight talking guide to everything that most people won't talk about in a professional setting. So with that in mind, let's jump into today's episode, which is titled Corporate Wankery, and ask Phil what that actually means.
Well, hi, Kate, and thank you for having me on. I'm really excited to share this with you and your viewers and listeners. What is corporate wankery? Well, I'd love to say how I came up with it, but I don't really know. And it was as a process of writing the book, and I think it was in like the second chapter. And I'm at home to a little bit of, language. And I was just describing to somebody, I was describing to the reader effectively, the meetings about meetings and the crappy one-to-ones and the terrible kind of review processes and like having to cozy up to people to get alignment, and all of this sort of shit. And I don't know. It just came out of my fingers into word as corporate wankery, and I was sharing a draft copy with one of my coaching clients, and because he was in the process of going out on his own as well, and it's like the first bit of feedback that he gave me was, I just love the corporate wankery thing.
Yeah.
Called it that at the time. I wanted to call it Enough is Enough, right? Because there's this whole theme in the book about, you're enough. We don't take bold steps because we don't think we're enough, and we don't, think we've got enough money, we don't think we've got enough personality, or we don't think we've got enough experience, or la 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 la. So there was this whole play on words, enough is enough. But then when I started Googling it and realised that there was loads of books called Enough is Enough, and that my clever play on words wasn't going to cut through because it was only me who knew what it meant, I reverted back to what Pete had said, which was, I love that corporate wankery thing.
Yeah, I think it's a great title. Before we dive into everything, let's give our viewers some context as to who you are, because I was just going back through your LinkedIn to refresh my own memory. And oh my God, I don't know how I missed it before, but you had the best job ever at one point. I saw Alton Towers. I was like, my God, I want that job. But yeah, tell our listeners who you are and what you've done and what you're doing now.
Indeed. Well, my name is Phil Sterne, and I cut my teeth as a recruiter. I spent years in recruitment organisations, recruitment consultancies, headhunting, and then I realised that actually I really liked the delivery bit, but not the sales. So, going knocking on doors, business development, all of that stuff, I could leave that. And frankly, I weren't that good at it. But what I was good at was building relationships and the delivery side. So I decided I wanted to go internal. I found a route into that and had a couple of different jobs in internal HR teams, essentially doing recruitment. And then the job that you're talking about, what was resourcing or recruitment manager at Alton Towers, came up, and it was a brand new job. And I was like, yeah, I could quite like that. I think that would be really cool. And I got the job over 2 or 3 other guys that were in the assessment with me. And honestly, it's probably the best job that I've had, best environment, the best time at Alton Towers as well, with the leadership team were there at the time. It was just, it's very different now. I caught up with somebody who's kind of not long left there, and the whole business, Merlin Entertainments, is quite different. But at the time, yes, I got free tickets. Yes, I got to go on the rides. But yes, also, I got to go out and wander. Most people will go and get a coffee, perhaps. I would go and get a coffee, take my litter picking stick and go and litter pick to guests. And tell them they got the map upside down or something like that. It was just and the people. It was a great experience.
Yeah. And for those that don't know, because it may not translate to an American audience, Alton Towers is like the original Six Flags or Disneyland before those places existed in the
Yeah.
UK. So it's like
Well,
the best theme park.
well, if you know Madame Tussauds, which I'm guessing everyone
Most
watching
people,
will
yeah.
have heard of Madame Tussauds. Originally, Alton Towers was part of the Tussauds group, and then Merlin was formed, and they have sea life centres and seal sanctuaries, and they bought all of that. So we've got the dungeons and London Eye and all these other things, and they expanded all over the world, mainly with the Tussauds and the sea life brands and all of that stuff. But yeah, it was phenomenal. But I went through another couple of jobs, sort of internal roles. All the time learning about what I liked doing and what I didn't like doing. To the point where I decided to go out on my own, and we'll get into that, I'm sure. I went contracting for a few years. I'm doing day rates. Then I landed on a job at Amazon, and then when I've had enough of that, I quit in 2020 and started doing what I do now. And what I do now is I'm an executive coach, and I have a niche that I play in where I help people who are looking to break out of corporate and go it alone and do exactly that.
So obviously you just led me into this. So you stepped away, you started your own business. But what was it that helped you really make the decision that corporate wasn't for you? Because I think, especially with things like return to office being so prevalent right now, I'm seeing a lot of people kind of teetering on the brink of thinking maybe I want to do my own thing. It sounds great to not be beholden to some corporate entity, but at the same time, not necessarily having the confidence to take that leap.
Yeah, sure. And there is something here about be careful what you wish for. But for me, well, it happened twice. So after the job after Alton Towers, I went to work for a car parts company, they're really well known in the UK. Unipart was the business, and I'd been there sort of 4 years or so, and some things happened. My team was effectively taken away from me because we were looking to sell, go private equity. The job changed a bit. There was some frustrations, and I decided that I'd had enough. I'd had a particularly terse conversation, and there was nothing. Unipart was great. I really loved working there, but there was a conversation or two that I had that sort of just pushed me over the edge. And I went for a walk down the garden with my wife, and we were just at we've got a field at the back there, just stood at the fence. I've just had enough of this. I just stopped myself from launching my mobile phone into the newly painted kitchen wall, right? And she said, "Why don't you go out on your own?" And I'd kind of already thought, I'd been thinking about going contracting, but there was all this, they want people to start straight away. If you're going to go and do a day rate contract, they want people to start like now or in a couple of weeks, not, wait 3 months for your notice period and all of this. So I did some research, and eventually, a couple of months later, I resigned. But what happened, the turn of events was, my boss at the time said to me, "Well, actually, that recruitment system that you've been wanting forever, well, we've now got the green light to do it. So do you want to project manage that?" And that's what I did. So I stayed, but on 3 days a week on a contract rate that was basically the same as my salary. I don't know that you can do that now, but I mean, the fact that it was 3 days a week gave me, that separation. Probably still be outside IR35. But that was my first contract, and then I ended up going and doing some other recruitment systems and process contracts. Like London Stock Exchange was a highlight, and a couple other things, and then it was barren. It was barren, and then I landed on the job at Amazon. But so that was the first thing that pushed me over the edge. And was it corporate wankery? No, not really. It was just, I was just fed up. I'd been there 4 years, and my role had gone from kind of a strategic role to doing again, and I didn't want that. I think critically, actually, the thing I haven't picked up on is that meant that there was a lot of business as usual. Day-to-day recruitment, and I loved all of my connections with all the leadership team. I had great relationships with all of them, but I didn't want to do the BAU anymore. I preferred the putting new systems, tools processes, branding, all of the same as what I did at Alton Towers, and I got bored in 2 years there, really. I thought, well, how can I kind of do more of that? Again, sort of very deliberately, I want to do these projects where I can do change and implement new stuff and make things better. So I created this company called Fix Resourcing to fix broken resourcing functions in businesses, and that's effectively what I did on a contract basis.
Okay. And obviously you're now focused, as we said earlier, on exec coaching. And I think anyone that's worked at Amazon is one of the biggest challenges they face is like burnout, particularly amongst the high performers. So I really want to talk about that and how you're helping your clients kind of break a cycle at the moment, particularly if they are thinking about taking that leap into doing their own thing. So at the end of the day, high performers often struggle to admit that they're not okay because there's this whole stigma, this fear of being judged or of having repercussions. So what advice would you have to people who are, like I said earlier, teetering on that brink, trying to decide when the timing is right, or at least get the confidence to take the leap without a safety net?
Well, there's so much there to unpack, really. First of all, there is never really a right time. Like with any big life decision, there'll always be some reason not to. So, there's always some project that you're halfway through, or a bonus that you're awaiting, or some more stock options that you're awaiting, or whatever it happens to be. So there's never a right time. The other thing is about high performers is that one company's, so I would say for a while in Amazon, I was sort of middle to high performing. But by the time I left, I wasn't, because I'd been completely ground down, and for all sorts of reasons that I won't go into here. But come out of, so I wonder sometimes actually if performance, when we talk about performance and performance capability, I think it's very environment driven as well. I think, it's the whole thing, you might have seen the cartoon of, like there's a whole bunch of jungle animals with the tree in front of them, and the teacher, who's a monkey, says, right, okay, guys, today we're going to be doing tree climbing. And the elephant stood there going, well, what? How's this going to work? But in another environment, obviously, the elephant's going to perform massively well. So I think that was me. I think I was a bit of a square peg in that round hole. So there'll be people in all sorts of organizations that are, high flyers, but others that perhaps aren't, but would be in a different environment because they haven't properly dialed into their strengths. So it's just a little segue. But to answer your question about the sort of spotting burnout and having the, for want of a better word, the balls to do something about it. Well, my own experience was that I almost had no choice. Right, I certainly had a choice when I left Unipark to go contracting, but I wasn't in a great place. But in my last corporate job, I was not in a good place at all. And actually what I realised that I needed was to completely change the way I worked. And that meant I needed a role where I could do lots of small projects, generate some validation. My confidence was sort of in the gutter, basically. Generate some more confidence, some validation. And I did that through writing CVs, background in recruitment and operations. And you'll know at Amazon, there's your written word is very valuable. And so I kind of piled all that into writing CVs. And the moment that I decided I took some time off sick, basically, is what happened. And I had no choice because I was sat on the sofa in my kitchen with my head in my hands, rocking backwards and forwards, going, I don't know what to do. And as soon as that happened, I knew what I needed to do, and that was to take some time off. I wasn't going to hang around to cozy up alongside people in the vain hope that I would get a really good review 3 months later, because it wasn't going to happen.
Yeah. So I think when anybody goes solo, and I can say this for myself, Amazon is a place where they attract a certain type of person. It's where high performers go to feel bad about themselves, is the phrase I like. And so when you do take that leap and you go into an opportunity or a situation where you're working on your own, nothing ever seems to be good enough. And I actually wrote about this on LinkedIn last year, where it was like, it doesn't matter what I achieve, nothing feels good enough, because I'm always going to hold it against my achievements at scale at a company where I had that safety net, I had that paycheck, I had like inbuilt systems to help me get there. Whereas when you're in a standalone, you can spend 5 hours just trying to get your Outlook to work the way you think it's supposed to.
So there's certainly some challenges from doing your own thing, for sure. Not least of all, and I reflect on this fairly regularly, is not having, not being able to wander down to the people in the next team that, they've got all the brains behind that bit. And that, it's the same, any organisation, it's going, let's go and have a chat with marketing or finance or whoever it happens to be. There isn't that. So you do kind of have to become all things unless you start outsourcing it, which I've done some of. But something that's been super helpful to me, and I don't think I did this deliberately, it just happened because this is just how I operate, is I networked around, talked to people, got introduced to people, started getting some associate work as well. And, somebody from one of my contracts got in touch and I did some work for them and a few other bits. And quite rapidly actually built a decent standalone business where I was doing financially, commercially, as well as I was doing at Amazon, which wasn't shabby. So I needed that time to rebuild my confidence. But that's not the case for everybody, right? For me, there was this sort of push and pull thing happening at the same time. I was being pulled towards being my own boss because then I could have control over things, and I was being pushed because I didn't want that. So I wanted freedom from that. People talk about freedom. I wanted freedom from that, and it crept up on me. It was a bit like sort of dying in a freezer, right? You don't know that you kind of get in there until it's too late, and that's kind of how it was for me. But for other people, it might just be, I've always wanted to work for myself. I've always had this burning thing. Now's the right time. Or I've been quite often people I'm working with. It's like, well, I've been made redundant, or I've taken a settlement, and I'm sort of sitting here looking back over the last 20 or 30 years, going, well, how the fuck did I get here? And none of it was sort of deliberate. It's just happened. They've got on the train at 21 or whatever age, 16 even, and kind of kept going and got off, moved different stations, taken different trains, and without much intention necessarily, perhaps a bit of sun, but then they get to a point when they're in their 40s and go, right, okay, I've got another 10, 15 years. What am I going to do with it? And that's the point that I get involved, and I'm having that conversation with them from a careers crossroads.
So for someone like me, for example, or someone that has been laid off, that's in the process of setting up their own shop, their own organization, I think it's inevitable that whenever you start something like this, you go into survival mode. Everything feels like you're one step away from it all failing, from it all crashing down. And the imposter syndrome that you felt perhaps in a big organization is now 10 times greater because you don't have anyone else to pick you up. You don't have kind of other people to bounce off, and you're finding that there's more you don't know the more you do. So what kind of advice do you have for those people that are in survival mode right now, that are trying to keep going but can't quite build up that kind of that self-confidence?
Well, I mean, from a from a business perspective, get a coach, right? I hired a coach sort of 2 years in, and he helped me transform my business. I went from doing sort of quite transactional work, writing CVs and whatnot, charging between, I don't know, say 200 and 1,000 quid per transaction, to enrolling 5-figure coaching clients. Who are going to work with me for a year on some big stuff for them, big ticket stuff for them. And that he really helped me kind of work out how I was going to do that. So number one, hire a coach. But number two, it kind of comes back to what I was talking about earlier, really. It's about your network. And and just getting back in touch with people that you haven't perhaps been in touch with for a while, and we haven't spoken in ages. Could you fancy a virtual coffee, or if they're local, a coffee. I'd love to know what you're up to. I'd love to share what I'm up to, and actually, you never know what's going to come from that conversation. There may be a connection, there may be a collaboration. God, there might even become a client. But if you go into it without any expectation of anything, then it could be a really nice open conversation. You never know where it's going to go. So actually, a lot of my support comes from people who I've met either like that or who have introduced me to other people. And then we have conversations, and it's either individual conversations, or we're in a WhatsApp group with a load of us, or we're starting new ventures. So one of my sort of long time collaborators, Dottie Day, this year started a thing called Giggly, which is all aimed at HR people HR people pros who want to go it alone. So there's obviously a really great connection there for me. Her background's HR, and she's created this kind of gig board for HR people doing exactly that, along with this kind of whole community that goes with it. So I'm working with her alongside a bunch of others as a subject matter expert, and there's a win-win-win mentality there. So, but you kind of got to be open-minded to just have conversations, and you just never know what's going to come out of it. But so that's how I get my support. And if I'm having a shit time, I'll text Dot or one of the others and just say, and they'll do the same.
Okay. So you're coaching others through career shifts, through changes right now. What kind of patterns do you see in people that are maybe stuck in the wrong role or identity?
Question. Yeah. We'll edit out this bit, I think. I think it's probably the biggest pattern I see is people don't know, like I said earlier, kind of they don't know how they got there, or they think they might have exhausted what they're doing, or they don't quite know what it is that they want to do next. I spoke to a guy only this morning. He's ex-Met Police and has been working with one of the big four of late as well for the last few years. And he's really frustrated and really struggling and doesn't quite know what he wants to do next. He knows he wants to do something different, his words, passion and purpose. But what is that? Don't know. So quite a lot I'm finding that I'm helping them work through exactly what that is and helping them connect with something deeper. And at the same time, using my own, I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of people on their careers. So I've seen a lot of different sort of career types, which means I can kind of bring suggestions of different avenues that they might want to take. And then I can coach them through, right, well, what does good look like then? What does good look like in 3 years' time? What does amazing look like? Well, let's work backwards. Let's come from that as a place. So I suppose one of the themes within all of that is people are unfulfilled. People are unfulfilled. And quite often that comes from not being stretched enough. So, you might think that I did a survey on this a couple of years ago, and it was quite telling, why do people leave jobs? Is it for more money? Is it for an easier commute? Is it boss is a knob? Or is it something else? Is a job stretching enough? And the vast majority of people said that they were going to leave their job. If they were going to leave their job or had left their job, it was because the job wasn't stretching enough. They were bored. It's exactly the same as where I was at Alton Town.
Honestly, I call BS on that. I think more people leave their job because their manager is horrible to work for.
Well, I mean, I certainly did, right? But I've also left because I was bored and I wasn't being stretched. So I guess it's horses for courses, right?
Yeah.
But that was the trend that I saw. And my experience is kind of like that and different at the same time.
Okay. And unfortunately, we're coming up to time. I always try and keep these episodes around 30 minutes just because most people listen to them like on the way to work or on a lunch break. But what is the biggest myth about success you wish more people would unlearn?
My gut tells me is that it's all about the money, right? I've been a recruitment consultant. Recruitment consultants are generally money motivated, and God, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Money buys us choice at the end of the day, and I'm reasonably comfortable as a result of my career and of the work that I do now. So I do have some options. But when I left Amazon, I specifically wasn't chasing the money. I was specifically chasing, this is what I want my job and my life to look and feel like. And I had a buffer, as a lot of my clients do. And I think that's a really valuable thing to have, to be able to objectively look at what is going to make your life feel more rich and more fulfilled. And once you nail that, like I think I have done, by the way, we're still all making it up as we go along, but nailed it to a degree, actually the money will flow. Once you get in flow and be you, the money will flow. But if you go chasing the money, the chances are you'll be ultimately unhappy.
I really agree with that. The biggest standout for me of going solo has definitely been the control over, I hate the term work-life balance or work-life harmony, but the control over when I work, how I work, what I look like when I'm working, who I'm working with, all of those things. I just feel so much more mentally and emotionally stimulated by work now than I ever did before.
Yeah, and it's a whole different ball game. It comes with its own stresses and strains. It's not for the faint-hearted
No.
by any stretch. But if you're there and the push and pull factors are in balance, or you're doing it for the right reasons, and you know that you can look and go, I'm doing this because, then when you have a tough month, which we all do, we can balance it off against the great months and go, well, okay, let's just be objective about this. It means I'm able to do X, Y, Z, and fulfill those whys, and you do it right, and the money will come too.
The other thing that I've experienced, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this, although I've not heard anybody else say it yet, is what success looks like to me inside a company like Amazon is not what it looks like to me now. Because like I said earlier, last year I was really hung up on the context of, hey, this was the best month I've ever had in my business, but it still feels like it's not good enough because it wasn't at the scale that a company like Amazon would achieve. And now I'm redefining what that success looks like. And it's very much based on the fact that, hey, what I wanted to achieve 6 months ago is not necessarily what I want to achieve now, but I'm really proud of the fact that I did achieve this. And what I want to achieve in the next 6 months is completely different. It's not necessarily about having 100 staff report to me or kind of having built my organization to look a certain way or replicate what other people think is successful, but it's rather about the achievements I'm making on a daily basis and the work that I'm doing and how it's impacting my clients. And that's not something that we tend to hear a lot, because often when it's just you, nobody else really knows about it as well.
Or other than your clients, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly, as soon as I started getting reviews, for the £45 CVs that I was writing, because I had no idea what I was doing for pricing when I very first started just over 5 years ago, and I started getting all these 5-star reviews and sort of glowing feedbacks. It's like, wow, and it was about not just about the quality of the product, but what it was enabling them to do. And actually, it was all of that kind of confidence and digging deep into people's, why they do what they do and the experiences that they've had, and that actually steered me towards coaching in the first place.
Yeah.
Because for me, I realised that people might say they want a CV, but that's just a piece of paper. Ultimately, what they want is the confidence. They want a new job. They want more, whatever it is in the hierarchy of needs. Or they want to feel a certain way. So I help them do that through whatever interaction I have with them. And that is success for me.
Love it. All right, well, Phil, I'm sorry to draw us to a close because I feel like we could continue this conversation for another hour. But as I said, we do try and keep them to around 30 minutes. So I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today. I will make sure we share the links to the book for those that want to hear more of what you have to say and continue learning from you. But anything you'd like to share before we close out?
Well, other than thank you for having me on today, I've really enjoyed it and sharing some bits of the story. Of which, if you get a copy of the book, this is in there. But ultimately, it will take you through the stories that you're telling yourself and how you're getting in your own way, how you can go about working for yourself, what the sort of different modes of doing that, and then sort of how to actually go about getting on with it. So there's some great content in there.
Love it. Absolutely love it. All right, Phil, and everybody else, enjoy the rest of your day. We do appreciate you, and we'll see you all again soon.
Bye.